Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. So today I am finally back. Oh my god, it's been so long since I have uploaded a video. I'm so mad at myself, but I'm so happy to be filming again. I have just had the most troubles with, first of all, I was sick for a whole week. I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't film at all. But then I just have had so many camera troubles. I'm actually filming on my vlogging camera right now because my god, I was meant to film yesterday, but I had setup problems and I had to go to the shops this morning, and then I get back and my camera's not working and it's like, ugh. Everything has just been in shambles in my life recently. So we're back finally, frequent videos, I promise, getting back into it, gonna get my camera fixed, but I'll film on my vlogging camera in the meantime. But yeah, we're doing another Mystery Monday today, and I know it's actually, oh no, it's not gonna be Monday for most of you because I'm uploading it tonight. So yeah, we're doing another Mystery Monday today, and let's just get into it. So today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, and this case is insane because it's like she literally just vanished off of the face of the earth. Like, I'm not going to give it away, and I'm sorry for the probable shitty quality sound because I have the aircon going, a little bit of echo, and I can't use my microphone with this camera, so it's probably just going to be a little bit iffy. We're just going to have to deal with it. So Jennifer Kesse was this absolutely beautiful woman. She was stunning, and she was born on the 20th of May in 1981 in New Jersey. 7 years later, her parents, Drew and Joyce, decided to move with her and her younger brother Logan to Florida. And Logan, Jennifer's brother, they were super close. They were 3 years apart. I think Logan was 3 years younger than Jennifer, and they were really close, always there for each other, really supportive of each other, and just a really great sibling relationship. While they were there, Jennifer attended Vivian Gaither High School, which was in Tampa, Florida, and she then went on to study at the University of Central Florida, which was in Orlando. And while she was there, she was a part of the Alpha Delta Pi sorority, I believe, and she graduated from this university in 2003 with a degree in finance and straight out of uni. So she was a really hard worker. Everyone around her described her as just this really caring, kind, intelligent woman who was super independent, super strong, and super like set on what she wanted to do. So when she finished university, she was actually offered 3 jobs all by the same company. They really wanted to hire her, and that was at the Central Florida Investments timeshare company. Her boss, who was named John Willman, said that she was really dedicated to her job, always on time. If she wasn't on time, she'd always text ahead or call, but she was like, her life was kind of like clockwork. Like, she went to work at the same time every day, called her parents at the same time, called her boyfriend at the same times every day. Like, she had a real routine that she was into. But yeah, he said that she was very dedicated to her job. Also said, like I said before, she was a very caring, kind person, and really everybody liked her. She had no enemies. That's what everyone seemed to say. She just got along with everyone. Within a year of working there, actually, she was promoted, and then in 2005 she bought her own condominium at the Mosaic Millennia Complex in Orlando, Florida, which was about 2 hours away from her parents because they lived in Bradenton. I'm so bad with pronouncing. I always pronounce everything wrong in these videos, but they lived in Bradenton, Florida, so that was like a 2-hour drive away. I looked on Google Maps, and without traffic, I think it was like an hour and 49 minutes. When she actually bought the condo, it was in kind of an area that was being developed. There was a new mall just near it. The complex hadn't finished being built. There was just a lot being developed in that area, so there was always a lot of workers around. Her actual condo complex, there were quite a few finished buildings that hadn't been filled, that people hadn't bought yet. So there were also workers that were living in these condos so that they didn't have to travel for work. And that actually made Jennifer feel super uncomfortable most of the time because these workers were staring at her and whistling at her, catcalling her, which made her feel very uncomfortable. And it made her like really aware of the fact that she lived there alone, and thought it was very obvious that she lived there alone. But other than that, like, things were going pretty well for her. She had a great relationship with her family, job was going well. She had a new boyfriend named Robert Allen, and they were in a very healthy relationship. They were long distance because he lived in Fort Lauderdale, which was like a 3-hour drive from where she lived. But despite the distance, they were very, very happy, had a lot in common. He was an English guy and her family just loved him. Her parents, the first time they met him, immediately loved him, thought that he was like the one. Her little brother Logan was kind of, you know, a little bit, Robert was older than her, so Logan gave him a little bit of shit, but did like him anyway, and they ended up getting along just fine. And the weekend before Jennifer disappeared, actually, Robert and her went on a romantic weekend away to a place named St. Croix. I don't know, I think the X is silent, I have no idea how to pronounce it. I listened to it a million times, but I just can't exactly remember. So this was in late January of 2006. On the 19th of January, Jennifer drove up to Miami to Robert's place, which is where they flew out from. And on the weekend that they were gone, because they were gone until the 22nd, Logan and a few of his friends stayed at Jennifer's condo, with her permission, of course. I think it was Logan, his friend Travis, and then there was also another friend named Matt, who actually happened to be one of Jennifer's ex-boyfriends. So it was a little bit uncomfortable, but so like I said, they came back on the 22nd. They both flew back into Miami, where Jennifer spent the night at Robert's place before she left the next day at 6 a.m. and she had work that morning at about 9, I believe, because she went straight there. She didn't stop at her condo or anything. She just went straight to work, which was a 3-hour drive away from his apartment in Miami. She worked all day Monday, and on her way out, she had a quick chat with her boss, which is actually the last time anyone is known to have seen Jennifer ever. So she drives home, and then at about 6:15 p.m. she called her parents, because she would call her parents pretty much every day just to let them know that she got home safe, had a good day, ask them how their day was. They had a very close relationship. So like I said, she would call her parents every day at a certain time, and that was just kind of expected. So while Logan still lived at home at the time, and he asked if he could speak to Jennifer, and they did, and he basically just told her, hey, Travis left his phone at your condo, can you ship it? And she said, yeah, I'll overnight it tomorrow, not a problem. And then that conversation ended. She ended up speaking with her best friend after that. I think her name was Lauren McCarthy, and Lauren and her had been best friends since the 2nd grade. They were super duper close. When they were younger, they would go on vacations together. Like, if one family would go on a vacation, say Lauren's family, then Jennifer would come, vice versa. They were like that. And Lauren, she spoke about the conversation that they had. She said that Jennifer was just kind of feeling a little bit down that night. Like, she just got back from vacation with her boyfriend, so she was a little bit bummed out, and she was also really feeling the distance in their relationship and was just not feeling good about that. And then at 9:56 p.m. on the dot, she spoke to Robert. So they would call every single night, every single morning. When she spoke to Rob, they had a bit of a disagreement. It wasn't anything huge, and I actually don't even know what it's about. I couldn't find that information online. He didn't seem to mention it, but from what I could gather from the conversation that she had with Lauren, it was probably just about her being bummed out about, you know, the distance in their relationship or something. But that conversation with Rob was actually the last time anybody is ever known to have heard from her. So last time anybody called her, because shortly after, not exactly sure when, nobody can say for sure when, but her phone was powered down, and also the Travis's phone was also powered down at some point between that phone call and the next morning. So the next morning, on the 24th of January, nobody could locate her. Jennifer's life, like I said, was pretty much like clockwork. She had a really set routine. And in that routine, she would call Robert every single morning. Robert actually described it as she was like his alarm clock. So she would call him every single morning on her way to work, just to say, hey, have a good day, and, you know, chat a little bit. She would leave for work at about 7:30 to 8 a.m. every single day, so she would always call Robert on her way to work, but today she didn't. So he ended up calling her, I think it was about 8 a.m. And it went straight to voicemail, which is how they know that I think the phones were powered down. They couldn't locate them either. And he didn't think too much of it. He called again, which also went straight to voicemail, but I think she had like an important meeting that morning or something, so he wasn't really too worried, just thought that she was caught up and that she would call him back when she was done. But she never did. She never called him, she never texted him back, and the phone was never powered on ever again. She also never showed up at work, so her boss John began getting concerned about an hour after she was meant to show up. Obviously he was a little bit frustrated before that, but he began worrying because that was so out of the ordinary for Jennifer. She was always on time, and if she wasn't, she would always call ahead to let them know, hey, I'm gonna be late, or hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it in. And she would do that on a normal day, let alone a day where she had an important meeting. So this was extremely out of the ordinary for her. And then I think it was about half an hour later is when he began getting really concerned and called her parent. He called her dad, and then as soon as they got off the phone, the dad and the mother, Drew and Joyce, called her, which also went straight to voicemail, which is when Joyce started really freaking out. She called Logan, and she was in a very emotional state, saying she wasn't answering her phone, she wasn't at work, and was just basically freaking out. Logan called Lauren, who said that she hadn't heard from her either. I think the parents called Robert, and he said the same thing, you know, I tried calling her this morning, went straight to voicemail. So they were all pretty concerned. This was very out of the ordinary for Jennifer, and Logan and the parents in separate cars drove down, took the 2-hour drive down to her condo to check on her. So Logan was the first to arrive. He got there at about noon. First thing he did was go up to the condo, knock on the door with no answer. He ended up banging on the door pretty hard, and again got no answer. And there was a worker's van just outside the exit. So say her condo is here. There's a stair entrance closest to her condo entrance, and right outside of those stairs was a worker's van. That makes sense. So he goes out there and he bangs on their van saying, hey, can I talk to you, please let me in, or please, you know, roll down your window. They wouldn't answer him, so he started yelling at them through the van and was like, have you seen this girl? Please let me know if you have any information. And they just totally ignored him, and they wouldn't roll down the window or anything like that. And then shortly after, I think it might have been like 15 minutes after, his parents got there, who had a spare key, and let them all into the apartment. So first thing they noticed when they got there was that her car wasn't in her normal parking spot, which was like as close as can be to their stairwell to get up to her condo. That was gone. She was also not in the apartment, but the apartment showed signs of the fact that she had been there this morning, and that nothing out of the ordinary had happened. There was no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing suspicious at all. It looked like she had gotten ready that morning. There was 2 skirts and a shirt, I think, on the bed, which made outfits, and she had some clothes from the previous day that she wore to work over her chair in her bedroom. It was also wet, as if she'd had a shower, so she had like a shower bath, and the bath was kind of still a bit wet, the walls were a bit wet, the shampoo and conditioner were a bit wet. There was also a wet towel which was on the washing machine to be washed. The bed looked like it had been slept in that night, it hadn't been made up. Her briefcase, her phone, Travis's phone, all of her important things were all missing. So it looked like she had just gotten ready for work like any normal day. The house was literally so normal. So immediately the family began looking for her, because if she got ready for work and never went to work, they were very worried about that, and that was extremely out of the ordinary for her. So they began handing out flyers, canvassing the area. They were kind of going around and knocking on doors and asking about her, and her sorority sisters were actually very involved in the search as well. They were printing out flyers and also searching for her, canvassing the area, knocking on doors, because I think the police were kind of useless, which seems to be like an ongoing problem in all of these unsolved mysteries, is the police doing like a really shitty job. So they actually called the police that afternoon and told them, and at first the police were just like, she had a fight with her boyfriend, you know, she's gonna come back. She is an adult, she's able to leave, nothing we can do about it. I think you guys are overreacting. And then they used some excuse like, she's probably just off mailing the phone, which made absolutely no sense to anyone. So nobody believed them. And the family told them like, hey, that's just not what happened. And then the police were like, okay, well, you know, they realized that because of her really strong connections to all of these people that hadn't heard from her, that maybe something a bit more suspicious was going on and that she was actually in a bit of danger. Eventually the police got involved in the search as well once the family convinced them that this was definitely not just a runaway case, and they got helicopters involved, they had divers involved because there was quite a few bodies of water around the area which were all actually filled with alligators, so that is we'll get to that. They had sniffer dogs, they had heaps and heaps of police on foot and police on horse looking for her, just this massive search which turned up absolutely nothing. Her parents then ended up calling the news stations because they thought they needed more than just help from the police at this point. They needed to get word out, they needed people to hear about it so that if anyone knew anything or if anyone had seen anything, they would call in. And that actually happened to be a very good thing because the police ended up getting a lead just after it, like 2 days after she went missing. The police got a lead from a complex called Huntington on the Green, and that was 1.2 miles away from her. It was in kind of a dodgy area, and they said that her car was there. So the police went down, and lo and behold, the car had been parked at the complex in the car park right near the pool. They thought this was going to be a huge break, that it was going to show them DNA, or maybe she was in the trunk or something, but the car ended up being actually pretty useless. They said it looked like it had been wiped down because all they found was a fingerprint and like the tiniest little fiber of DNA. And the briefcase, her purse, both phones, all of her valuables were not in the car. Although it didn't look like it was a robbery, there was no signs of forced entry or anything. And there was she had like a few valuables in the car. There was like a DVD, brand new DVD player in the backseat which hadn't been taken, which led them to believe this was not a robbery at all, and that was not the motive for whatever had happened to her. While they were there, they also noticed that there was actually a few security cameras pointing towards the car park, and the video shows everything on camera. It shows somebody pulling in to the car park, then they fix up their park and go back into the car parking spot, and then they stay in the car for 32 seconds before they get out and just casually walk away and never look back. They walk around the outside of the fencing of the pool area, which the surveillance footage catches on camera. This is the most frustrating part of the case. I'm going to show you guys the surveillance footage and you're going to see why. This surveillance footage is so bad. Not only is it super grainy, but it's one of those cameras that gets like one piece of footage every few seconds, one frame every few seconds, and it just so happens that every single frame that they catch of this person, they're behind the pool gate, which is so frustrating because it's like there's three poles, three thicker poles in the frame. So it's like, you know, gate and then the poles, you know what I'm talking about? And every single frame, their face is behind the thicker pole. It is the most frustrating thing in the world. You can't tell if they're a man, you can't tell if they're a woman, you can't tell what they're wearing, you can't tell anything. There has been so much speculation about this. Some people think that it's somebody wearing a construction worker's uniform. Some people think that it's someone wearing a security guard's uniform. Some people think they have a ponytail. Some people think they're wearing a hat. Nobody can tell if it's a man or a woman. It's more widely believed that it's a man, which I am leaning towards as well. But it is so bad. They had NASA enhance the footage, which turned up nothing. They had the FBI look at the enhanced footage to see if they could see anything. They couldn't tell anything except for the fact that this person was between 5'3" and 5'5". So many people refer to this guy as this girl as the luckiest person of interest ever, because they truly are. Like, if they had been caught a centimeter the other way, their face most likely would have been in the frame, but each time they're shown, their face is hidden. So as soon as they saw this, they got sniffer dogs in to sniff from the car, and the dogs took them straight from where the car was and took them the 1.2-mile distance back to her condos at the Mosaic condos. And the dogs took them to the stairwell, which was closest to her condominium entrance, and stopped at the very bottom of the stairs. So the dogs didn't take them up the stairs to her condo, it was just down the bottom. And also they got a lot of scent at where her car park was, which I think is obvious. I also thought that I would mention that the sniffer dog that they used was named Bo, which is my little Bobo. So yeah, unfortunately the sniffer dog didn't help at all, finding the car didn't help at all, the surveillance didn't help at all, and the weirdest thing is it's like she just literally vanished in thin air. And another thing about this is whatever they did with Jennifer's body, whatever they did with Jennifer, whether she's alive or they were disposing of the body, they had to have done it very quickly, because the surveillance footage shows that an hour after John, her boss, called her parents, that is when the car pulled into the complex, if that makes sense. So say for example 11 o'clock is when he called the parents, that footage was at like 12, so an hour later. There was a very, very short time frame in which this, whatever happened to her, had to have been committed. And nobody could think of anyone who had done this, no one specific. It was kind of like everyone was a suspect, but nobody in particular was a suspect. You know what I mean? Like, it could have been a whole bunch of people. It could have been the workers, the construction workers. It could have been a co-worker, could have been someone at the gym. It could have been some random person, but no one in particular. Obviously, Robert and the family were looked at first, as they always are in these situations. The family or the people closest to the person who has gone missing are always looked at first. Robert was questioned first. He was the first suspect that was looked into, but he was never actually considered a suspect. He had a very strong alibi. He was in Fort Lauderdale, which was 3 hours away. Him and Jennifer were very, very close, had a very healthy relationship, and he was just questioned, and that was pretty much it. His phone records and everything showed that there was just no way that he was the guy and that he was telling the truth in his testimony. Logan and his friends were also investigated because they were staying at her condo while she was away. They were pretty much all cleared, and they kind of honed in on Matt because he was the ex-boyfriend, and there was a lot of talk that he was still in love with her and wanted to get back with her. And the night before she disappeared, on the 23rd of January, he was actually at the Blue Martini, which is a bar which was just across from her condominiums, and he was extremely intoxicated. But he had like an alibi, or I don't know, he even agreed to do a polygraph test, which never ended up happening. But for some reason he was completely cleared, and they said that it definitely wasn't him, so I don't know. Another theory, and this happens to be the one that I very strongly believe, is that this had something to do with the workers. As I mentioned before, she was extremely uncomfortable about them. They were constantly catcalling her, staring at her, whistling at her, and she also had a few things in her condos that had to be fixed, like paint and stuff like that, so they actually had to come into her condo. She never gave them a key, I don't believe. There was a bit of miscommunication there because some of the workers didn't speak English very well, so there was a little bit of miscommunication there. But from what I heard, she would come home on her lunch breaks to let them in and make sure that they were doing what they said they were doing and that they weren't slacking. Every single time they were in her apartment, she would always be on the phone to Robert or her dad or somebody because she was that uncomfortable. She was a very cautious person as well. They said that she watched a lot of Law and Order SVU, and that has, I don't know, but she was very, very cautious. And every time she was on the phone to somebody while the workers were in there, she was always very irritated, said that they were working very slowly and that they were looking at her, and she was just frustrated by the whole situation, which Robert, when he was on the phone, was like, hey, chill out, they can hear you. And her dad said that he could hear them, and that some of the workers couldn't speak English very well at all. Another thing, which as I mentioned, is that some of the workers actually lived pretty much next door to her. They lived in the condo complex because that way they didn't have to travel, and a lot of them were unoccupied, so while they worked, they lived. And because the workers were there every single day, it is possible that they noticed a pattern of when she would leave and when she would get back and when she would come home on her work breaks. It's very, very possible that somebody knew that, especially the people that lived there would have heard her leaving, heard her starting up her car, what times, and all of that kind of stuff, and would have known when she was going to her car or when to attack, basically. Another thing is, so the police did end up interviewing these workers, but the thing is, a lot of these workers were actually undocumented and illegal, so it was extremely hard, if not impossible, well, it was impossible to track whether they had interviewed all of these workers, who all of the workers were, because as soon as police started investigating and questioning them, a lot of them just disappeared. So there's absolutely no way to tell if police had interviewed all of them. Police have no way of knowing if they interviewed all of them. Police have no way of even knowing who all of the workers were. So unfortunately, nothing came of interviewing these workers. I 100% believe that one of the workers had something to do with it. Actually, one of them, it was later found, like a few years later, found that one of them had actually been arrested, one of the workers that worked on that condo complex, and was in jail for something else. So yeah, super suspicious. I think that maybe they knew when she was leaving and they got her in the stairwell, or they were waiting inside her car or something and kidnapped her that way, maybe threw her in one of the rivers, and the reason that a body has never been found is because of the alligators that they said were prominent in the bodies of water near her. I don't know exactly what scenario would have happened, but I definitely think that this had something to do with the workers. The last theory that I want to talk about is that this was someone from her workplace. So there was 3,000 to 4,000 people that lived at her, well, not lived, but worked at her workplace. It wasn't a small place, and like I said, she did get along with everyone. There was no enemies, but there were people that wanted to date her, thought she was very beautiful, wanted to take her out. There was one guy in particular who often asked her and had a crush on her since the first week that she started working there, but just was not getting the hint that she didn't want to date anyone from work. So she had this thing, I guess, that she just didn't want to date anyone from work, and I think that's totally fair and totally justified. And yeah, this guy was just not getting the hint. The police did interview them. They interviewed them very, very shortly. There was 12 people in particular that they interviewed, but nothing came of these interviews. And John, her boss, said that he really thinks that the interviews were not enough was done by the police, and that they didn't really look into it enough at the workplace. But they collected one computer hard drive and found nothing suspicious on it. There was nothing suspicious at the work at all, apparently, until a few years later. In 2010, so 4 years later, it turns out that one of her co-workers at CFI actually filed a restraining order against one of the supervisors. And this supervisor was the same guy that would not take the hint from Jennifer that she did not want to date anyone from work. And the actual documents regarding this whole situation actually suggest that he might have had something to do with Jennifer's disappearance. So the guy that filed the restraining order and filed these documents said that he didn't want to happen to him what he thinks happened to Jennifer, or he thought that what happened to Jennifer might happen to him, which is why he filed the restraining order. The police didn't really look into this at all, though. They kind of brushed it off. The workplace was very involved though, and you know, put signs up everywhere and actually offered a $1 million reward for Jennifer if she was brought home safely. And the very last theory that I want to mention actually is that maybe she was a victim of human trafficking. At the time of her disappearance, Florida actually had one of the highest rates of human trafficking. So while I don't think it's likely, I do think that it is a possibility. Maybe the worker was in the human trafficking trade and kidnapped her and got her into that I'm not sure. Drew and Joyce also never gave up. They put stickers on their car, they put flyers out. They also had the really smart idea of putting all of her information and a photo of her on a deck of cards and distributing them throughout jails. And they pretty much did everything that you could think of. In 2009, they actually got a lead from a convicted killer who was in jail. His name was David Russ, and he was inside a Florida jail for murder and said that he had some information about Jennifer. So Drew actually went down himself and asked to speak to this guy, and he said within the first 5 minutes that it was so blatantly obvious that this guy had no idea anything about Jennifer or anything about her situation. And yeah, it's pretty much all of the information that I have for you guys today. That's all of the theories that I have. I would love for you to comment down below any theories that I didn't mention, any information that I might have missed, because it is a pretty big and confusing case. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. If you do have any information, I will put all of the contact information down below so you know who to contact if you have seen or heard anything. It's very important to keep these cases alive because they closed this case, I believe. There was a petition to have this as a cold case so the police could continue looking into it. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you want to see more Mystery Mondays, if you enjoyed this. Also make sure to comment down below, let me know what you think of the case, and let me know any cases you would like me to cover next week, and hopefully I will see you in my next one. Bye!